The floor is yours.
Thanks, Ruben. Thank you.
Berwick.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you very much for having me here to join you and for spending your valuable evening with me. I really am very grateful to you. I already know JP has a lot of stamina because you've been through this for a number of hours, and I look forward to the dialogue, but I'll also respect your time. I'd like to say a few words of introduction to myself, a little bit more about my background that Ruben mentioned, and a little about why I'm running, but I'd like to leave most of the time for you to ask me the questions that are on your mind. That's the most fun for me and maybe the best way for you to learn about me. So I'm Don Berwick. I'm a pediatrician by training. My home is in Newton. I've been there 37 years. My wife Ann is in the back there, and we raised our 4 kids in Newton. One of my daughters, Jessica, lived actually just a couple blocks from here in JP for about 4 years and absolutely loved this community. We got to know it better and better, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's a bit like returning to home, given how our connection is here with Jessica. So I'm a pediatrician, as I said. From the very beginning of my work as a pediatrician, though, I was interested in policy and government and how organizations worked. I did practice for 22 years in the old Harvard Community Health Plan, the HMO, that some of you may have been members. My practice is at the Kenmore Center there, largely serving pretty stressed families and underserved children. But I maintained an interest in systems and especially quality of care, which is what Ruben was referring to. When you're a doctor, things go wrong sometimes, even though you're trying your best. People get infections they shouldn't get. They wait too long. You forget they seem to get forgotten in the system. This bothered me a lot. And so in the 1980s, when I was really in the early part of my practice, I started becoming a student of improvement. How does innovation and improvement happen in large and complex things? How did we get to the moon? That's a pretty complicated enterprise. It involved a lot of very disciplined forms of management and constantly learning and improving to be able to make things better. I wanted to learn that and apply it in healthcare. I actually left for a year or two to study other industries. How did NASA work? How did Bell Laboratories work? And I brought that stuff back into healthcare as the vice president of the Harvard Community Health Plan for quality. In the late 1980s, I took that work and started with some friends around the country a nonprofit organization called IHI, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. Some of the people that have worked with that organization are in this room. IHI began as a little fledgling nonprofit in 1989. It grew over the next 22 years to the largest enterprise of its kind in the world, trying to make health and healthcare better in towns and communities and states and nations all over the world. I think we worked in 40 or 50 countries and certainly every state in the United States. And I got to help lead that effort. And we made big successes. We made major dents in unnecessary deaths in hospitals, in public health, in prevention of complications. It was just an amazing career. I loved it. And then everything changed. It was the day after Christmas, 2008, right after President Obama was elected, I got a call out of the blue. It was from Senator Tom Daschle. Senator Daschle was, at that point, designated to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. That did not happen, but I had met him once or twice. He called me out of the blue and he said, Don, the president would like you to run the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to come to Washington and run CMS. That was a bit of a surprise. That's a big agency. That's $820 billion a year of expenditure. It's the largest budget in federal government, 5,500 employees, and it was the lead agency for implementation of the healthcare reform that was about to come. It was a pretty surprising offer. I said no. And my kids said, Dad, it's $820 billion. Take it. I said, you don't get it. But I decided to look at it, and I went down to Washington and interviewed a bit. And there was a moment, which I mentioned this in my convention speech in June, and I want to make sure you've heard it from me again, because it's really important to me. I was sitting in the atrium of the Hubert Humphrey building, which is the building where HHS headquarters are. I looked up at the wall, and on the wall were the words chiseled from a speech that Hubert Humphrey, the vice president and senator, gave in 1977. And here were the words. He said, "The moral test of government is how it treats people in the dawn of life, children, how it treats people in the twilight of life, the aged, and how it treats people in the shadows of life," he said, the sick, the needy, and the disabled. It was a very important moment when I saw that, because it all came together for me. You might want to know, I grew up in a really small town in Connecticut. None of you have ever heard of it. It was called Moodus, Connecticut. You've heard of it? Yes. Very rare. You've heard of it, all right? It's tiny. My father was a general practitioner there. He made house calls at night. He went to the hospital every day of his life to round on patients. My mother, she was an activist. That word, she wouldn't have been, I don't think that word was used in those days, but she's responsible for the new school that got built in that town. And I grew up in that environment. And the thing I know about that town was that if your car broke down, if you broke down on the side of the road, the next car would stop. You would never pass by somebody whose car was in trouble. You'd stop and say, "Can I help you?" And that's where I come from. That's my background. And when I saw that quotation and realized I was being given the chance to help 100 million people whose cars broken down a little bit, who need some help, it just gripped me. I wanted to do that. That's what I've been doing with my life in the work I did in my nonprofit. Here was a chance to do it at a scale I never could have imagined. There are 100 million of our neighbors are in the dawn of life, the twilight of life, the shadows of life. They need help, and I was given a chance to help them. So I took the job. The Republicans had other ideas. Glenn Beck called me the second most dangerous man in America. That was my. I was deeply insulted. I wanted to be first, but anyway, I'm going to keep trying. We had lost the filibuster-proof majority in the Senate when we lost Ted Kennedy's seat, and so they couldn't get me confirmed. The president decided to make me a recess appointee. That's a special designation in the Constitution. It allows me to take a position that's presidentially appointed. Usually requires Senate confirmation, but you can serve without that. And I got to serve for 17 months, and it was amazing. I wish you could have been there. This chance to participate in assistance to people who need help, to do it from the platform of compassion and commitment to the moral test that Senator Humphrey talked about, and also to begin this journey in this country, finally, at last, toward health care as a human right. We're the only nation in America, nation in the world that hasn't made health care a human right of the Western democracies. Now we're en route. We stand a chance of doing it if we keep our heads straight, and if you, progressives, keep the lead. You've got to speak out about this. But I got to participate in that. It was an amazing job. We added prevention benefits to Medicare. We covered kids under 26 under their parents' policies, millions of kids. We began to close the donut hole in insurance and drug coverage for elders. We stopped the governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, from shutting down Planned Parenthood. We fought him and we won. We put new requirements on insurance companies to reveal their rates. We did a lot of good, and that good continues now. But I had to leave. There was no chance of confirmation, and the provision ran out, so I came back to Massachusetts. I came back with two minds. Mind number one was so excited to have been in government and to see what's possible when we keep together, when we work constructively with the private sector, and when we commit to the proper roles of government, which include passing that moral test. But I also came back distressed because of what's happening in Washington. It's quite awful. It's a place that's stuck. People not working together. Civility is just not part of the picture. When I was there, I had to meet every single member of the Senate Finance Committee, this committee of jurisdiction for me. And I did, the ones that would meet with me. One of them was Senator John Kyle. Senator Kyle is the #2 ranking Republican in the Senate, the guy from Arizona. And I walked into Senator Kyle's office. He came in. He looks at me. He doesn't say hello. He said, "Dr. Berwick, you have never said a single word or written a single word that I agree with." That was his hello. I like you, I think what I should have said is, "I'm against murder. Are you against murder?" Just sort of establish some foundation of agreement. But it's ridiculous, isn't it? There's just, what you want to have, even with a person you disagree with, is to say, where do we have common ground? What are we trying to accomplish for this nation? What could we do for people? No, that's not on the table. It's stuck. And the consequences are terrible. You're seeing it play out in the loss of the moral test. We're taking food from children. We're trying to deny people health care coverage. Some are. We apparently, there are people in the world, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, they think if your car is stopped on the side of the road, you put it there, you get it out, If you're hungry, Your problem. You can't find a job, your problem. You're poor, you earned it. And I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm still of a different mind, which is we owe each other help. The public's losing trust in that. They watch Congress fail. Congressional approval ratings are, what, 7% now? That's awful in our nation. This is the nation that got to the moon. This is the nation that built the interstate highway system. We created the Marshall Plan. We do amazing things in this country, and yet you go out and poll the citizenry, they say we can't do anything. Government can't get anything done. That is tragic. And I come back upset about that and anxious to put a stop to that. We need examples of success in the agenda of compassion and caring for each other and committing to solving large problems. And you come back to Massachusetts, and the first thing you realize coming back from Washington is we can do that. This is a state that can execute that. We made healthcare a human right in 2006, 8 years ahead of Obamacare. We said you can marry the person you love early among the states. We are committed to the safety net, and we're really trying hard to fix healthcare. This is really important stuff, and it's crucial for the nation. The nation needs a beacon. It needs a place that's working and where we're not afraid to say that we're committed to ending homelessness and ending hunger and providing healthcare as a human right and reaching out with compassion to each other, trusting that it is not win-lose, it's win-win. When we help each other, we all win. That's the agenda we need. This state can do it. My background in improvement, my background in innovation, what I've done for 30 years in large systems trying to get to performance they've never imagined before, that's what I want to bring to the corner office. We need it in Massachusetts. We've got big problems. I'm sure you're going to ask me about them. We can solve them, and we need to do that to prove to the nation what a progressive, compassionate place looks like. We can pass the moral test. I'm committed to that. I think I'll stop there. Let's have your questions now, and please fire away. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got a moderator here, so I forgot. Yeah, I was trying to take you.
So speaking of big problems, as you're well aware, the legislature over the last several months has been debating welfare reform, and many of the proposals they were considering would have done things such as requiring an 8-month pregnant woman to show proof of ongoing job search, would put 4,500 people remove them from disability assistance, put immigrants out, take them out of housing. Can you talk about how you view these attempts to change or improve welfare reform, and what you view your role as governor to help families in need, low-income families?
Well, families in need, people really on the edge of poverty or in it, these have been part of my life since I began in my professional career. And before that, in my practice at the Harvard Community Health Plan, a lot of my kids were on Medicaid. They were in very stressed families, single-parent families that were having a really tough time making ends meet. You can read it now. You saw the Crittington study just last year showing that 3 out of 4 single-parent households in this state are having trouble getting the basics done, food, clothing, and shelter done. People in that form of distress, they need help. They don't need barriers. They don't need us to figure out new ways or new hoops to put them through in order to get the help they need. Now, we have to have discipline there. I'm not for fraud. I'm not for people tricking us. But the idea that we have to set up all these gates and requirements so you can get food in your mouth, a roof over your head, or health care, I don't go along with it. I would look at different proposals, but my question is this going to put a block between that child and the food the child needs, or between this family and the house they need? And I get really worried when we think that we're going to solve this problem by putting more restrictions on people who already have the biggest restrictions in the world, and those are the restrictions of poverty and inequity. So I'm a skeptic about moves like that.
Thank you.
Yes. Is it okay now? Yeah. Why don't you call on people? You know who they are. Yeah. Thanks.
Take the stress off.
Your credentials are very impressive. Do you see a path to single-payer healthcare?
Single-payer healthcare. Okay. Here's the deal. So we built a pretty complicated healthcare system in this state and in this country, and it's not doing very well. You saw the report from the Commonwealth Fund last week or 2 weeks ago. It's the same report again. We are not anywhere near the highest performing healthcare system in the world, and we're by far the most expensive. We're 23rd, I think, in infant mortality. We're 40th in life expectancy. Our public is the least satisfied public among the 10 Western democracies that have been surveyed in that recent study. It's been true for 2 decades. We have the most expensive system by far, 40% more than the next most expensive. So we need to fix this. It's dire that we fix it. This is not kind of a matter of leisure to probably hope we get it right. I'm thrilled that this state has universal health care coverage. I can go anywhere in America now and say, hey, in my state, health care is a human right. I'm proud of it. We should never, ever let go of that. But the health care has to be focused on patients and on needs and families and stop wasting money. It needs to take every nickel and make sure it's adding to health and well-being. It's not doing that now. It's extremely costly, much more than it needs to be. I will tell you this, from 30 years of experience, we can have all the health care we want and need, absolutely, for absolutely everybody, at a cost far lower than we have now if we're willing to change the care. Now let's go and see, why isn't the care changing? Well, it's the way we built it. How does a hospital stay in business today? It keeps its beds full. We have set up a system which says a full bed's better than an empty bed. Doesn't make sense, does it? Where is the money going? Follow a doctor or nurse through their day. You know this. And watch how much of a nurse's time gets spent in paperwork and filling out forms and billing procedures. We have built a complex system that is just eating us. It's eating our lunch. If you look at the state budget, you can see it. The Massachusetts state budget in the past decade, in real dollar terms, constant dollars, 2012 dollars, everything's down. Parks and recreation budget down 25%. Local aid's down. Higher education's down in real terms. Early childhood education. Everything's down except one line item in the state budget, healthcare. It's up 59% in the past decade. You see, all this problem of structure of healthcare, it's taking opportunity from everywhere else. This is not a matter of leisure or patience. We've got to fix it. So now we're trying. We are trying. We made healthcare a human right in 2006. That's great. 2011, we passed Chapter 224. And that says, well, we're going to try in the current system with some minor adjustments, no, big adjustments, moving to global payment, moving to new forms of accountability, allowing more collaboration. We're going to get new healthcare. I hope so. I hope so. Because we can do it. I've seen places that have functioned. I'll tell you about them if you want. They get much better care, much lower cost, and we're saying we're going there voluntarily. I hope it works. I hope we can keep the system we've got and get everybody on board voluntarily and make it work, but I am not so sure. And in my healthcare platform, a week ago Thursday, I put out my plan, which is I want to watch like a hawk. If I get that corner office, we are going to watch healthcare change in this Commonwealth the way we've intended it, or we're going to change it intentionally. And one of the biggest changes we might make is single payer. If we move to a simpler payment system, if we have to, all of those administrative costs start to fall, the overhead falls, the dialogues are simpler. I ran Medicare and Medicaid for 17 months. Our overhead rate it's at least below 3%. I think it was 1%. The overhead rate in an insurance company today is over 15%. That's waste. So I'm not saying go there now. Maybe we should. I want to look at it. What I propose is the day I occupy that corner office, I will, with the legislature, appoint a multi-stakeholder committee. I want a report on my desk in 6 months or a year that says, if we went to single payer, this is how we would do it, and this is the results if we would get there. We've got to put that on the table as an option, because I won't bet my grandchildren's future on a voluntary system until it actually delivers the results. That's how I feel about it.
Could you speak about...
I'm so sorry. This is a... I'm just too enthusiastic. I can't... Yes.
I'll jump in my own time.
Okay, great. Thanks.
She would have called on me.
If I pick the wrong person, you'll tell me. Is that right?
Could you speak about early childhood education and how important you think that is? And I don't mean pre-K. I mean from infant toddler up.
Early childhood education. And could I speak about that and not just pre-K? We have a chance in the first 5 years of life to help prepare people, along with families, for entrance into a productive economy, a life of joy, an ability to maximize their talents. But you only get that window. A kid who isn't made ready for school, for joining the tasks by 4 or 5, there's a lot of rework to do, let me tell you. A kid at 4 who isn't ready for school, that kid's going to fail at school. Their self-image will decline. The costs of instruction are going to go up. Some of them will be headed for prison or for lives of unemployment or for underemployment. We cannot afford that. A smart society invests in kids in the early years so that it makes itself ready for its own future. We are underinvested in that now, especially families of low income. They need more help than they're getting at the moment. We need to make sure that every kid in this Commonwealth is ready for school, and that would be my target. They have to be supported through good childbearing so that pregnancy and childbirth are exactly what they can be now, given the wonderful approaches we now have to healthy childbirth. They need to be helped to bond with proper daycare and supports to families so that a mother isn't depressed and so stressed she can't focus on her kids, and a father isn't so lost in the job market that they can't focus on their family. And then they need preschool education, and I think that's absolutely key. It's central to it's just, you know what it is, it's smart. It's not just compassionate, it's smart, and that it's high on my screen. Of course, you're talking to a pediatrician, so you kind of have me at hello, but that's.
Go ahead, you're
Yes, sir.
First of all, I grew up in Minnesota, so anybody who quotes Hubert Humphrey,
I'm with you.
but I'm going to sort of go beyond Bruce's question on education. I'd like to add, I'm a public school teacher and parent, and just like to hear your thoughts on pre-K to 12 education.
Yeah. Frankly, I'd like to hear your thoughts because I want to learn more. But let me tell you what I think now, and then you come back at me, okay? Please. It's every once in a while. What's your number one priority? Your number one priority. For me, it's justice. But the question is, what's the route to that? So a society where we can be proud of ourselves and each other. And it's hard to pick the keystone, but if I have to pick one, it's education. And the reason I think that is because the more people I ask, the more people point in that direction. And it sounds kind of right for me. It's what you said about getting people ready to enter society and school. Education has the second part of it, this elementary and secondary education, which we're doing pretty good at this state. The recent report that just came out last week, so where are we now? The nation's not doing so hot. We're below average for achievement of our kids in secondary, in 15-year-olds. But Massachusetts, if we were a nation, would I think be, is it 6th now in verbal and maybe 10th or 9th in science? So we can be pretty proud. The problem is equity. The problem is evenness, because you go around this Commonwealth and you do not find that excellence is the norm everywhere. My view of any enterprise is, why would we do less than the best everywhere? If someone can do it there, why don't we do it there? And that's not the way our schools are right now. So we really need to do something to elevate the stressed communities and stressed schools that we have. We can. We invested 12 years ago. That's why our scores are so high. We need now to continue to invest in that. For me, the hub is teachers. My daughter's a teacher, so I've got a self-interest in this. But that's a dignified, honorable, noble profession that deserves the support that allows teachers to learn every day, to be together, to understand what best practices look like. And if I were to become governor, I would focus on that human resource development piece, attracting more and more people of really high capability into teaching, but for teachers who are there to help them learn and practice the skills better and better, a kind of learning system across the waterfront. I think we can do it. In healthcare, what we did was always find a best practice. People are getting this infection, you don't like it, find someone that stopped it. Learn what they did and bring it in. And I think that can happen in education over and over again if we invest in that. I want to say something about community colleges, but come back at me. What did I get wrong? What do you think?
Well, I would love to talk to you at another time at Big Forum. I don't want to take up your time. I guess I'd like to ask maybe specifically about equity and in particular about charter schools.
Yeah. It's a complicated matter. Here's my current view of charter schools. We need laboratory environments in education. We do not have the answers. There have to be sites where kids are getting trained, but they're also very actively exploring new ways to do things and seeing if they can achieve breakthroughs. In my opinion, charters are a way to do that. Properly managed, nonprofit. I'm not for for-profit charters. I think it should be in the nonprofit world. Not in an uncapped number, some distributed number of charters. I like the idea of having laboratory environments. I like even better Horace Mann charters or the in-district charters, which I think then are more likely to be in relationship to the mainstream system. My requirements of charters would be, number one, you can't play games with selection. You've got to really take a population that's equivalent to the one we're trying to learn about, which is everybody. Second, you've got to share what you learn. The concept, and it happens, that charters learn something. They've got an innovation, and they don't think they have an obligation to share it widely so others can learn and copy it. That's not good. And I think we have to put some heavy duties on them. I would love any superintendent in this Commonwealth who's interested in innovation to bring all of that thinking right into the mainstream school system. I think teachers should be able to try out things, to use their minds, to invent things, to share it with each other, to have that kind of learning culture everywhere. But I think a limited role for charters, properly managed, is a constructive addition to our educational enterprise. That's my view.
I guess, would you support lifting the current 18% cap in urban districts?
It would depend on the district. The answer is raising the cap, not abolishing the cap. As long as performance is increasing, I'm happy to see that kind of experimentation go on. I think it's healthy to have very, very robust innovation going on in a large system.
To hear you talk about justice is something that I'm glad you use that as a central part of your platform, and I'm sure I won't be surprised by your answer to this question, but you talk about our healthcare system and how it sort of depends on beds being filled in hospitals. And a parallel that I would like to draw and have you talk about would be our penitentiary system.
Oh, yeah.
And just if you could discuss some of the ideas around reentry and some of the ways, as a governor of this state, that you would go about innovating our
correction systems.
Yeah, correction.
Well, first, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on everything, and this is an area which I'm learning fast and hard about, but I already have opinions, for better or worse. The first one isn't what your question is aimed at, is that we need to envision a society where no child is destined for prison. We got to move upstream and understand what is this trajectory that people end up on that throw them off the tracks of normal constructive relationship in our society. We've really got to think in prevention terms here. But within the correction system, we haven't got it right. We have 12,000 people in our houses of corrections, 12,000 people in our state penitentiaries. We're not doing anything to do anything other than see that they're trained to come back as criminals. And it's just wrong. We need a probation system that is actually trying to keep people from having to go into prison. That's going to mean outreach of all sorts of forms, and especially, I must say, mental health care. I think there's a tremendous connection between our failure to invest sufficiently in behavioral health and mental health care and what we're suffering with in terms of violence in our society. We really need to understand that. For the people in prison, they need to serve their time. And I want people to, there's justice in that end of it, but why would we put someone in a prison and not do everything we possibly could to prepare them for proper reentry into society with more pride, more sense of self-worth, a chance at a job, and some chance of coming back into social respect if they've done their time. We don't do that. We've cut the education budget to the bone in our prisons now. We've done it because of this reactive, really media-driven thing. One parolee gets out, does something really bad, everyone gets angry, of course, and says, oh no, lock them and throw away the key. We can't do that. That's not smart. Recidivism rates here are rather high. I think they're 60%. They're about average for the country over 5 years, much too high. We know there are experiments done. When you have proper training programs and rehabilitation within the prisons, the recidivism rates cuts in half, goes down in the 30s, and we probably can do better than that. I know a program that I lived in Anchorage, Alaska for a year and a half. My wife had a sabbatical year there, and we moved the family to Anchorage in the 1990s, and I got familiar with the Indian Health Service. I saw kids occasionally in little villages out on the Bering Sea. The system, the healthcare system in Anchorage is owned by the Alaska Natives. It's called NUCA, and the NUCA system has as part of it a program called Family Wellness Warriors. They're not throwing away the key when they lock someone up. They're not forgetting a person. They're saying, look, yes, you made a transgression. Yes, you've done something bad, but you can be a warrior, a wellness warrior. And they reach out to this population. They bring all the services in possible, and they have substantially reduced recidivism and relapse rates. Why wouldn't we do that? Do you know how much it costs to keep someone in prison? So to me, it's smart, and we need a mature public dialogue about this and reorient us toward the restoration of human spirit and well-being. It's an investment worth making. That's what I think. Yes, ma'am.
I have kind of a two-part question. There's two cases that are currently pending before the Supreme Court that affect women in Massachusetts. One is the buffer zone case that affects the other is the fact that corporations right now are trying to claim a religious exemption from the Affordable Care Act based on Citizens United decision that gives corporations rights as people. So I was just wondering what you would do as governor should the buffer zone be repealed, should that provision of the Affordable Care Act be repealed where employers can now, or basically employers have the right to deny women contraceptive coverage through insurance. What would you do as governor to ensure that women have safe access to clinics, women's healthcare centers in Massachusetts, and what would you do to ensure that we have affordable health, coverage, contraceptive coverage, and that we have privacy rights as far as coverage goes?
Yeah, I mean, you know my answer. Fight like I would fight like hell. I mean, this is ridiculous. As strange as it may seem, and as progressive and enlightened an environment as we have here, women's rights, women's choice, the right to control your own future is in jeopardy in this state. The actual number of vote margin we have for women's reproductive rights in the state is very small. I think it's single digit even in one of the houses, in the House. We have to be. No one can afford to go to sleep on this one. This issue of the buffer zone attack is ridiculous. I mean, why would we allow ourselves, women and families, to be subjected to the kind of abuse that they will be, the dangers that they will be if that were to go away? It's got to be fought. I've met with Planned Parenthood. I've met with NARAL, and I know their platforms. I agree with virtually every one of the platforms. In fact, you'll be seeing me put out the policy statements on that. What I am now learning is how vulnerable that is, even in this state. We've got to stand firm on this stuff. I fought it at Medicare. In Medicaid, as I told you, we shut down the effort in Indiana to essentially defund Planned Parenthood. We fought them in court, and we won. No way. And I fought to get the proper contraceptive benefits and counseling benefits under the Affordable Care Act, into Medicaid and Medicare. And I would fight every day as governor for this. It's just right.
What about the religious exemption part?
The Supreme Court, of course, is wrestling with the religious exemption part. I think there may be particular contexts of conscience in which I guess we have to stand and say, I think that I think we need to preserve the rights of women to have access to contraception everywhere we possibly can. What else can I say? Yes, sir. Medical marijuana? Well, on medical marijuana, I have the experience of a physician. I've seen chemotherapy patients with other causes of rather serious pain, and it is simply a fact that sometimes, not infrequently, one arrives at marijuana. Cannabinol is the only really effective treatment, and I just don't think we should deny people on some theoretic grounds access to essentially the kind of support that will relieve pain. It's just, to me, that's too direct. And I think we can do that prudently. We would need very strong oversight, but I have very little question about the enlightened nature of going to proper use of medical marijuana. In terms of legalization of marijuana, that to me is an empiric question. I think we'd approach it cautiously. I've seen kids, teens, and adults who have been really victims of very, very severe overuse of marijuana. Maybe we could establish an environment in which it's possible to have legalization without that overuse. I'd want to take a close look at it. I don't have a position on overall legalization yet. Yes?
We'll take one more question, then I'm going to jump in.
Okay.
Moderator privilege on questions.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Green?
I'm just curious.
Excuse me.
I mean, so many of us are have listened to your views very carefully because we admire what you propose. I'm just wondering how quality of care issues would be addressed in spite of all the changes that you wish to make. And one more question, sir, and that is to do with transportation. So much in this state needs improving. Transportation is not the least of these.
Two big questions. Quality of care. I guess, is your question implying that some of the changes that we're seem to be facing in healthcare could injure quality of care? Is that your concern?
Well, in spite of the changes that you have said, there would always be ways, in which healthcare delivery would be faulty, or rather.
Absolutely. First of all, we don't have to accept that. My view of care is no defect should be regarded as acceptable. We have a continuous, ongoing, and never-ending battle against the things that go wrong in healthcare. When a person gets an infection that should have been prevented, or they wait too long, or they get misdiagnosed, let's improve it. Let's continually improve it. That's what I have done for 30 years, and I believe deeply in that. We now can eradicate infections in hospitals that I would have thought 20 years ago were absolutely inevitable. I've seen enormous breakthroughs in care, and the secret here is it's about the relationship between being better at something and the cost of it. So you know this. You know that if you buy a car and it's a lemon, a bad car, it's going to cost you more over the long haul because defects cost more than getting it right the first time. The same is true in healthcare. If you are in a hospital for a simple procedure and you get an infection, you're going to stay longer, more things have to be done to you, costs go up. In healthcare, like in any other field, when quality goes up, costs go down, and leadership, the kind of leadership I've tried to practice for 30 years, it builds on that. It says, let's do it right. Let's not let that 4-year-old be unready for school. That's a defect in the way we helped them, and that'll be more costly later on. Let's not let that prisoner get out of prison, go back, and just come back. That's a defect. We can fight defects everywhere, and the best possible way to get healthcare costs under control is to reduce defects in care, and that's been my wheelhouse. Now, transportation. Talk about defects. It's a pretty serious issue. I go to many living rooms around this Commonwealth. I am stunned. It was almost surprised me to see how often people are concerned about getting around. If you're here in the inside 128, you're going to talk about the MBTA and its rolling stock and its service lines and its vulnerabilities. If you're in Greenfield or Pittsfield, you're going to think about the Regional Transit Authority and the bus schedules. If you're in New Bedford, you're wondering if you can ever get access to the Boston job market. People everywhere are worried about transport. And we've underdone it. We've made the same mistake with transport in the ways we have in corrections, which is we let things get bad. That was done in prior administrations, and it's built up this bill that's enormous, many billions of dollars it's going to take just to get our rolling stock back. You probably don't know this, but you own 5,700 railroad engines. They're yours. Take them. That's the state ownership of railroad engines. The average railroad engine in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is 22 years old. The average lifespan of a railroad engine is 20 years. The average bus, you own 5,000 buses. The average bus in this Commonwealth is 12 years old. The average lifespan of a bus is 10 years. Believe me, I did not know this before I ran for governor, but now I do. Let me tell you, we can close our eyes and walk away from it. There'll be people who argue, we don't have the money. We don't have the money. Do you understand what happens if we don't find a way to repair that? The buses stop, the trains stop, the service goes down, and look, you change the oil in your car for a reason. The same reason we have to invest in keeping up transport. The second part of transport that excites me is innovation. I've started talking to people who invent things and new ways to think about signaling on streets. You ever heard of smart streets? Incredible idea, which is you can actually program street corners and buses so that if a bus approaches a street corner, the light turns green. That means if you take the bus, there's no stopping. That's a simple innovation in transportation. That's just one. I've heard dozens of these. And I think if you take the stuff I love, which is find someone that solved the problem, bring it into our communities, we can do amazing things. And I think we should. We've got to.
Okay, I'm going to jump in with a question, and
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
probably have time for two-ish more questions.
Two-ish more.
Two-ish.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a little bit to revenue,
Yes.
which I think impacts a lot of the things that people are talking about here. As you're well aware, I'm sure, in the budget debate last year, the current governor proposed what many in this room viewed as a progressive change to the tax structure in the Commonwealth, reducing aggressive gas and sales taxes, focusing on changes to the income tax that would, a lot of the revenue focused on early education and care and transportation infrastructure investments. The legislature rejected his proposal and responded with a $500 million gas tax for transportation. As governor, had you been governor at the time or in the legislature, which side would you have been on? And as governor, what will you do on the tax reform front?
Well, I basically supported the direction of this governor's proposals. I think he's going in the right direction. But let me tell you what my approach to revenue finding the resources to do things like fixing transportation, solving our corrections problem, making sure there's early childhood education. We got to find resources to invest. So right now, I'm thinking of this in 3 ways. The first way is basic. Everyone says it, but I know what this means, and that has to do with waste. I know that every candidate's going to talk about waste in government, but it's real. It really is real. In any system of work, there's going to be a lot of activity that doesn't help anybody, and any smart executive, anybody that really wants to create an environment where people are proud of their work and the customers are well served is going to look for waste first. In healthcare, I will tell you, the levels of waste are about 30 or 35% minimum. We could solve the healthcare problem entirely by just looking at all the ways we waste time and money and energy not helping a hair on anybody's head. As governor, I would focus on that, believe me. I would go place by place, area by area, and look for activities in which we have resources that we could reallocate. That's what I did at CMS. Day 3 there, I called an all-staff meeting at CMS, and I began to say we're going to be focused on the continual improvement of our agency. We're asking healthcare to be more responsive to patients. We're going to be more responsive to our customers. We're asking healthcare to innovate. We will innovate. We're asking healthcare to act like a team. We'll be a team. And we ask healthcare not to waste a nickel. We're not going to do that either. And I began a extensive process there, working on waste reduction. I went to my staff. I remember this is like the first week, I think. And I said, you know, I've been out there. We have regulations that don't help anybody. They just hurt people. Find them. I want 50 on my desk in a month. They came back with 80 regulations that came from the dark ages. They had nothing to do with function now, and beginning to simplify and make things easier for us and for the citizen. That's investment. That frees resources. The second is healthcare. I told you the numbers in healthcare. Let me tell you how good it can be. Ann and I lived in Anchorage. There's a system in Anchorage now that serves the Alaska Natives. It's owned by them, the one I mentioned called NUCA. NUCA is team-based, seamless care, behavioral medicine and mental health right in the center of it. They try to keep people home, not in the hospital. They use spiritual healing. It's an amazing system. Between 2004 and 2009, they reduced hospital days 53%. 53% fewer hospital days with quality scores through the ceiling. Everyone's happier. You change the care, you get the money back. That's the second major source of revenue we need in this Commonwealth, which is to get our healthcare costs under control. We have, I think it's $12 billion, maybe $14 billion of our $32 or $34 billion budget going to healthcare. We save 10% of that, we'll fund transport. Healthcare improvement, reduction of costs through improvement is a secret source of revenue, big one. Yeah, but we do come to taxes. So I'll tell you my general view of taxation and how we should approach it. People who are wealthier should have an opportunity to give more. And people who are at the lower end of the spectrum in this era of increasing dramatic income disparity need to be asked to do less. It just makes sense to me. Do you know that in 2012, the average income of the top 1% of people went up 20%, 24% I think it was. The average income of the other 99% went up 0 to 1%. We cannot have this. People who are lucky or earned a lot of money and are wealthy, they need to be able to contribute more. We need tax policies that respect that as much as possible. Now, of course, in our state constitution, we can't have a graduated income tax. I want to put that back on the table. I don't know if we could do it. I don't know. I mean, others have tried, but we really need to ask the question, isn't it justice if the people who have the most get to help the most? To me, that seems fair, and that's the way I'd approach it. Individual tax policies, I do support the gas tax. I think it makes some sense. It's a halfway step, but we've got to find the revenue for rehabilitation of our transport system. We've just got to do that. Do you want to pick the last two so they won't be mad at me?
What are you in the front? So ask a question again.
Well, there were two questions, so I'll take your choice. That other candidates were asked. So
Okay.
One had to do with climate change and specifically the carbon tax. And the other, which if you don't like that, the other one, was the casinos, general opinion on
I can
that.
do both. We've got to free ourselves as far as possible from carbon dependency. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for our present. It doesn't make sense for our future. I have two beautiful grandchildren, Caleb and Nathaniel. I look at them and I think, what planet am I going to hand them? Those are the consequences. And we've just got to take this seriously. Now, the world isn't taking it seriously enough yet, but I want Massachusetts to be a beacon. I want us to be a place that says, oh, we can do that. Luckily, we have a governor now who, in his terms of office, have really put us on the map now, maybe the leading state. When he took out office, we had 4 megawatts of solar. He set a goal, I think, of 250 megawatts by 2014. We hit it in 2012. Now he's upped it to 1.6 gigawatts by 2020. That's boldness, and I would double down on that. Alternative clean energy sources, they just make sense for my grandchildren, and they make sense for us. Do you know what would happen if Hurricane Sandy had hit Boston? You don't want to know. It would have been probably the biggest disaster this city would have seen in decades. We've got to take this seriously. Getting free of carbon dependency is important. The ways to do it, we know. The first is conservation. The best fuel source is the energy we don't use. And there are tremendous strides we could make in conservation, efficiency, efficient appliances. We have clean energy sources we can exploit more solar, as much as we can possibly go to. Wind, especially offshore wind, we need to be courageous about that. It's a scalable, clean source of power. We really need to go there and show the country what it looks like when we do. And then there's the hydropower that's available if we have smart policy to pull it down mostly from Canada. All of those don't burn carbon fundamentally, and we can wean ourselves off this. We have to internalize the cost of carbon. One of the reasons we're not doing this is carbon is an externality. All these effects, they're not in the price. They are in the price, believe me. We're subsidizing fossil fuels a lot more than anyone really wants to see. But we need to pull that cost back into the market and show us what's costing. That's for my grandchildren, that's for you and me. We have to do climate mitigation also. I mean, look, we're going to have storms, we're going to have rising sea levels. We have to get ready. This is a vulnerable state, and we have to have robust building construction. We get computers out of the basement and put them on the 4th floor so they don't get flooded. Simple things like that, complex things like that. Maintain our floodplains and our wetlands properly, but we really need to work on that. Casinos, I'm against them. I just don't know another way to say it. I understand the arguments. I'm not insensitive to what it must feel like to be caught in unemployment, caught in a low employment community. We have Pittsfield, 18% I think of kids under 25 in Pittsfield are unemployed. Go to New Bedford, see what it's like there. Go to parts of the city. It's not good. We need jobs. Jobs have to be central. But I just don't think this is the right way to think about jobs. Jobs based on gambling. I don't want to offer that as kind of this great solution for what really ought to involve the building of a better economy. Take clean energy. We have 80,000 clean energy jobs in this state now. We have 5,500 clean energy firms. We grew clean energy jobs 24% in the past 2 years. That's smart. Casinos, no. They hurt small businesses in the surrounding community. That's documented. We know it. I think they bring in very large corporations that don't have a lot of interest in our Commonwealth. They're not invested like you are in the health of your community at all. And they create a public health problem, or they surface it. Gambling addiction is real, and if you've dealt with families that have this, it's like any addiction. It hurts the victim, it hurts the family, it hurts the community. Why would we buy a major new public health problem, which we then have to treat, when we just had a conversation for 20 minutes about how to get health care under control? It just doesn't make sense to me. So I say, no, deep breath, let's not do this. Let's come back, and I support the repeal effort.
Okay, so we do have to close the program.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Obviously, folks are really excited to hear from you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
If there's any closing words you'd like to say.
My words are thank you. I was in Washington for 18 months for this president, who's a great president, and trying to advance a progressive agenda like you in this room care about, it's hard. It's hard because the voices are too silent, because people don't speak up. I was in the White House frequently, and the question was over and over again, who will support us? Who will be there? Where will be the votes? Do they care? And your noise, your volume, your ability to speak up and say, justice matters, correction reform matters, poverty relief matters, small kids matter. You've got to say it loudly, and you're doing it. No matter who is your governor, please, please don't remain silent. This country's too vulnerable, and you're too important. So thanks for being here.